Pepperwood is really dedicated to developing the scientific knowledge base that everyone in our region needs to take better care of our land and our water and our wildlife. When I put this presentation together, I couldn't believe how many partnerships came up. It's kind of going to be a blitzkrieg of Pepperwood partnerships for you, but everything that we do relies on partnerships, and we love our partners. I think part of being effective as a community is leveraging each other's strengths, and you'll see how we do that in some of these examples. First of all, honoring Herb and Jane Dwight, who also helped build this building, but actually gave the community this incredible platform of the Dwight Center for Conservation Science. And they're working with us to continue to be able to support the organization through our volunteers and philanthropists, individuals, and foundations. I love the description our architect gave for the Dwight Center. He said he imagined that it was a crash-landed spaceship and the astronauts were wandering around trying to figure out how to survive here. And that's kind of an interesting definition of what sustainability and resilience is learning how to live out there. And it kind of reminds me of that movie about Mars that was out last summer. But we achieved this by research, education, and community building from our crash-landed spaceship. First of all, just the impact that our partners make on our land. So we take care of 3,200 acres. We're trying to maximize the biological value of that. And we do that all partnering with agencies like the Resource Conservation District, the Water Agency, the City of Santa Rosa, and our volunteers. But getting into the tech side of things, it does start with a weather station. So as soon as I got to Pepperwood, I said, we need a weather station. And luckily, this fellow was a retired engineer from Agilent who said, I want to get you a weather station. That immediately went into the internetosphere, and it now provides a basis for inviting other people to come do research at Pepperwood. So we have a very strong visiting scholaring program, and also supporting the Santa Rosa Junior College science curricula. And our goal is to use Pepperwood as a place where we're using the very best of technology to monitor climate and the physical drivers, especially the water balance, and how that influences life on the preserve. And we want to do this forever. So right now, this is a map of the preserve, just showing you, I think, just our weather stations. But we do have a wireless mesh network, and luckily, a company called SenseTerra partnered with us because they wanted to test out this kind of equipment, and we're deploying it with their help. The data that we generated, and particularly our soil moisture data, was immediately applicable to managing the drought that we've been in. So the Sonoma County Water Agency actually utilized the Pepperwood soil moisture measurements to understand how much rain they were going to need to refill the reservoirs. And the surprising discovery we made is that that black dashed line is what we think is the maximum soils could dry out, and during this drought, they actually got drier than that. They got drier than the wilting point, which actually is now being used to correct hydrologic models for our region. So here's some of the biological observations. We have 50 forest monitoring sites. We have 22 wildlife camera observation stations. We also run the ones on Modini. People are measuring lizards and reptiles and tracking life in our ponds, and also doing regular bird surveys. We have an herbarium on site that was established by the California Academy of Sciences and demonstrated that there were over 750 different plant species at Pepperwood. And we have now brought this into the 21st century by scanning our live samples and dried samples and putting them in the herbarium database online. And then also connecting with the California Phenology Project, which I really advocate for climate monitoring, is getting one of these phenology transects in place. It's actually very challenging and a high skill level to monitor this site 2 times a week, but we're contributing to international databases looking at the impact of climate on plants. And part of what we do at Pepperwood is host scientists across disciplines to try to solve problems. So this is my Terrestrial Biodiversity Climate Change Collaborative. We like to call it TBC3 because we can only say that once. But this includes oceanographers, hydrologists, soil scientists, plant ecologists, wildlife ecologists, and spatial analysts who have been funded by the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation for 5 years to come to Pepperwood on a regular basis and advance our understanding of how climate is impacting our natural resources and how our natural resources are actually a resource for resilience in the face of climate change. Our tools are now being applied statewide by the Department of Water Resources. And this is an example of the mapping products that we've come up with that have tapped into that brain trust and understanding that actually there's different dimensions of drought. There's one that affects our water supply and how much water gets into our reservoirs, but there's also one that's about how dry is the land and how much water does the land need to recover either natural functions or agricultural functions. And we were really excited in the last 2 years to be closely partnered with local governments in Marin, Napa, and Sonoma to test out this knowledge base. So we were very committed to not just creating a massive wad of data that only we could access, but working with managers to say, what are your real practical questions you have about the next 100 years? And let's look at what the climate models indicate. This is now a tool that we're developing, and I would love, if anyone wants to test out a Climate Smart Watershed Analyst online tool, talk to me, because we're trying to make this data available so that everyone can access it, and it's not just a really expensive resource available to a few. We love our wildlife camera arrays. We have one at Pepperwood and one at Modini, and actually all the other stars are places where they're going in or already are in place. And this is a great example of how the technology got to be cheap enough that we could really deploy it at scale. Each of these sites have what is like having a biologist sitting full-time watching round the clock at the scale of 1 kilometer. And we're learning just so much about the wildlife in our area, and it's the first time we've really had data. We do all these things to protect wildlife, but how do we know how the wildlife are doing? So the proposal I'm working on right now is actually partnering with Conservation International because they know a whole lot more about big data management than we do, and we see our niche as being the experts on the ground working with other natural areas, how to get the cameras in place and how to get the data, and then handing it over to CI to make it part of a global database on wildlife health. We're the first partner they've chosen outside of the tropics to do this work. But really, the most exciting part is partnering with these guys right here in the 4th row. As I said, technology is not really, it's not even really my blood. My parents bought me an electric typewriter to go to college, okay? So did not have a computer. These young people are doing technology. As my stepson told Lori and Alan Flint, our modelers, Alan said, "Are you taking a class in technology?" And Tikla said, "Well, we don't really learn technology, we do technology." So this is the thing, is we're handing over the technology tools and training them in GPS and geography and learning how to monitor redwoods and learning how to monitor climate change. And in the process, also making sure that we're in alignment with all the different evidence-based education practices for bringing this along. And they are contributing to iNaturalist.org, which I'm proud to say Pepperwood was the Bay Area fiscal sponsor for iNat that helped get it launched. And now there's, 2.1 million observations worldwide on iNat. Talk about technology becoming a new lever. There are more observations going to GBIF, the Global Biodiversity Information Database for the world, from iNat right now than from biologists at universities, okay? But these are checked by biologists at universities, so it's really exciting. But this kind of meaningful integration, I think, I was really allergic to the idea that we were gonna show our teenagers how to use smartphones, because they seem to already know that, but it makes it real to have the technology component and to have the social media component, there's a community building that they're building themselves now using these tools. So just bringing back that, not only is it a really cool thing to collect all this data, it gets used, and the drought's a great example. We talked about the soil moisture data. We also did an assessment of what plants had been stressed by the drought. We did a transect actually all the way through California, and it goes on and on. The one thing I didn't get to talk about, which is really cool too, is our fog monitoring project. So we're also monitoring fog. This collaboration in Sonoma County is really special. I can't even name all the partners, but we were recognized by the White House as climate champions because of our ability to work together. So we're asked to say lessons learned. Partnerships are critical. We are a role model for the planet. And I really want to emphasize the need to leverage each other's strengths. Christina knows how to run drones. I don't need to learn how to run drones. I need to partner with Christina, for example. And it takes a lot of time to do these partnerships and do the coordination you talk about. And we need to make the case for that to the people who fund our work.